I should have known something was wrong when Claire started laughing at her own jokes. Not the polite chuckle she used at work meetings, but that sharp, cutting laugh that meant someone was about to get hurt. We were sitting around our dining room table in our Boston brownstone, the one I'd spent 3 years renovating with my own hands. Claire had invited her usual crowd over for Friday dinner. Ava, her gossipy best friend who worked in marketing, Jules, her colleague from the tech startup where Claire ran HR, and Greg Fallon, Claire's boss and the kind of guy who still talked about his college fraternity at 41. "So, Nate," Greg said, swirling his wine like he was some kind of sommelier instead of a middle manager who drove a vintage Mustang to compensate for his receding hairline. "Claire tells me you're working on the Seaport project." That's big money. I nodded, cutting into my steak. Good steady work. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. "Steady," Claire repeated, and there was that laugh again. "That's Nate in a nutshell, Mr. Steady." The others chuckled politely. I kept eating, but something cold was settling in my stomach that had nothing to do with the wine. "Remember when we were dating?" Claire continued, her voice getting that edge it got when she'd had too much to drink. "And my ex Kevin texted me out of the blue? God, if he texted me now, I'd probably drop everything and run." Ava giggled. "Claire, you're terrible." "I'm serious, though," Claire said, looking right at me with those green eyes that used to make my heart skip. "I mean, let's be honest here. I married average, safe, steady, average Nate." The table went quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then they all laughed. Even Jules, who usually stayed out of Claire's more vicious moments, cracked a smile. I smiled too. Had to. What else was I going to do? Make a scene in front of her friends? Storm out like some kind of drama queen? So I smiled and took another bite of steak and let them have their laugh at good old average Nate. But inside, something shifted. Something that had been holding steady for 8 years of marriage suddenly came loose. "Well," I said, raising my glass, "here's to being average. At least you always know what you're getting." They laughed again, thinking I was playing along. Claire reached over and squeezed my hand, that patronizing squeeze she gave when she thought she was being generous. "See? This is why I love him. He's such a good sport." The conversation moved on to office gossip and vacation plans. I nodded in the right places, made appropriate comments, played the part of steady, average Nate. But I was watching them now with different eyes, watching how Greg's gaze lingered on Claire when he thought I wasn't looking. Watching how Ava and Jules exchanged glances when Claire made another dig about my simple pleasures and blue-collar charm. When it came time to clear the dishes, I volunteered for kitchen duty. Always did. Claire liked to stay with her guests, holding court in the dining room while I played the good husband, cleaning up after everyone. That's when I saw her phone. It was sitting on the kitchen counter, screen up, buzzing with a text message. The contact name read GF, and the message preview made my blood freeze. Tonight. My place. Wear the red dress. I stared at that screen for a long moment, listening to Claire's laughter echoing from the dining room. Greg Fallon. GF, of course. I didn't touch the phone. Didn't need to. Everything suddenly made perfect sense. The late nights at the office, the new lingerie I'd found in the laundry, the way she'd been picking fights with me over nothing, like she was trying to justify something to herself. I finished loading the dishwasher, my hands moving automatically while my mind raced. When I walked back into the dining room, they were all looking at me with those indulgent smiles people give to pets and children. "There he is," Claire said. "My domestic god." More laughter. I sat down and poured myself another glass of wine. "Actually," I said, "I was thinking about taking a little trip. Maybe visit my buddy Mo down in Southie. Haven't seen him in a while." Claire's smile flickered. "When were you thinking?" "Oh, you know me. I'm spontaneous." I grinned at her. "Might even leave tonight. Really shake things up." Greg shifted in his seat. Jules looked confused. Ava was already pulling out her phone, probably to live tweet the drama. Tonight? Claire's voice went up half an octave. But we have plans tomorrow. Do we? I tilted my head, playing dumb. I don't remember making any plans. But then again, I'm just average. My memory's probably not that good. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Claire was staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time, trying to figure out what game I was playing. The truth was, I wasn't playing any game. Not yet. But as I looked around that table at their faces, Claire's barely concealed panic, Greg's guilty flush, Ava's hungry anticipation of drama, Jules's uncomfortable confusion, I realized something important. I might be average, but average guys have advantages. We're underestimated, overlooked, people don't see us coming, and Claire was about to learn that the hard way. I excused myself after coffee, claiming I had an early morning. Really, I went upstairs and packed a bag. Not much, just enough for a few days. I left a note on Claire's pillow. Gone to Moe's. Need some space to think. Don't wait up. Your average husband. By the time I heard the front door close and the guests leave, I was already in my truck, driving through the narrow streets of Beacon Hill toward South Boston. My phone started buzzing before I'd gone 3 blocks. I didn't answer. Let her wonder. Let her panic. Let her try to explain to Greg why her average husband had suddenly become unpredictable. This was going to be fun. Moe Kowalski lived in a triple-decker in Southie that hadn't been gentrified yet, which meant you could still get a beer for $3 and nobody cared what you did for a living. He'd been my foreman on a job 5 years ago, before he got out of construction and started running a small security consulting business. Ex-military, divorced, and the kind of guy who could spot trouble from 3 blocks away. So, let me get this straight, he said, handing me a Budweiser and settling into his recliner. Your wife called you average in front of her friends, and you found a text from her boss asking her to wear a red dress. That's the short version. And instead of confronting her, you ran away to my couch. I prefer to think of it as a strategic withdrawal, Moe grinned. You always were too smart for your own good, Bishop. What's the play? I took a long pull of beer and stared at the muted TV showing a Red Sox game. Honestly? I don't know yet. Part of me wants to just file for divorce and be done with it. But another part of me wants to make her pay. Yeah, good. Cheating's one thing, but humiliating you in front of people? That's something else entirely. Moe leaned forward. What do you need? That was Moe. No judgment, no lectures about taking the high road. Just straight to business. Information, mostly. I need to know how deep this goes, how long it's been happening, who else knows. I can help with that. Still got contacts at a few investigation firms. Discreet guys. Nothing illegal, I said quickly. I'm not looking to break any laws. Course not. But there's a lot you can learn just by keeping your eyes open. He paused. What about her friends? They seemed pretty comfortable laughing at you tonight. That stung, but he was right. Ava definitely knows something. She's been covering for Claire for months, making excuses when Claire's supposedly working late. Jewel. I'm not sure about Jewel. She seemed uncomfortable tonight. Uncomfortable can be useful. People who are uncomfortable make mistakes. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Claire. I'd gotten 17 since leaving the house, progressing from confused to worried to angry to panicked. I showed Moe the latest one. Nate, please call me. We need to talk. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings tonight. Hurt your feelings, Moe repeated, like you're some kind of child who got his feelings hurt. She doesn't get it. She thinks this is about my ego. Isn't it? I considered that. Maybe partly. But it's more than that. She looked at me tonight like I was nothing. Like I was furniture. Something she was stuck with but didn't really want. Moe nodded. So show her what nothing looks like. Ghost her for a few days. Let her imagination run wild. And then what? Then we see what she does. People reveal themselves when they're desperate. The next morning, I didn't go to work. Called in sick, which I never did. Instead, Mo and I drove to a diner in Cambridge and sat in a corner booth planning. First thing, Mo said, spreading sugar packets on the table like he was drawing a battle plan. We need to confirm what you already suspect. I know a guy who can do some basic surveillance. Nothing fancy. Just see if your wife and her boss are really having an affair. How basic? Following them around. Taking pictures. Maybe checking what gym they go to, what restaurants. All public places, all legal. I thought about it. Part of me didn't want to know for sure. As long as it was just suspicion, there was still a chance I was wrong. But I'd seen that text message. I'd seen the way Greg looked at her. Do it. Second thing, you need to control the narrative. Right now, you're the husband who stormed out after a dinner party. That makes you look unstable. But if people start hearing that your wife's been cheating, how do I do that without looking like I'm spreading rumors? Mo grinned. You don't spread them. You just plant seeds. Let other people draw their own conclusions. We spent the next hour working out details. Mo would handle the surveillance through his contacts. I would start laying groundwork with mutual friends and neighbors. Nothing direct, just casual comments that might make people start paying attention. What about her friends? I asked. Ava and Jules? Ava's loyal to Claire, right? She'll be a problem. But Jules, you said she seemed uncomfortable. Maybe she's got a conscience, or maybe she's jealous of Claire. Either way, she's a potential asset. I'm not going to manipulate people into... Bishop. Mo's voice was firm. Your wife humiliated you in public and she's cheating on you. This isn't about manipulation. It's about justice. Sometimes good people need a little push to do the right thing. That afternoon, I drove back to my neighborhood. Not to the house. I wasn't ready for that confrontation yet. But to Murphy's Pub, the local bar where a lot of the neighbors hung out. Sure enough, I found Tom and Linda Garrison, the couple who lived 2 doors down from us. Nate! Linda waved me over. We heard you and Claire had some kind of fight last night. Everything okay? Perfect. The neighborhood gossip network was already activated. Oh, you know how it is, I said, sliding into their booth. Sometimes you realize you don't know someone as well as you thought you did. Tom nodded sympathetically. Marriage is tough. Linda and I went through a rough patch a few years ago. Was it another woman? I asked, then immediately looked embarrassed. Sorry, I shouldn't have. It's just, you start wondering, you know? Linda's eyes went wide. Oh, Nate, you don't think Claire is... I don't know what to think, I said, which was technically true. She's been working a lot of late nights lately, coming home with stories about office parties and team-building exercises. And her boss, Greg, he seems like a real charmer. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Greg Fallon? Tom's expression darkened. Guy with the Mustang? I've seen him around the neighborhood a few times. Thought that was weird. When? I tried to keep my voice casual. Couple weeks ago, Saturday afternoon. You were at your job site, I think. Saw him pick Claire up. My heart pounded, but I kept my expression neutral. Probably just work stuff. But Tom and Linda were already exchanging glances. The seed was planted. I spent another hour at Murphy's, nursing a beer and dropping careful hints to other neighbors. Nothing accusatory, just a confused husband trying to make sense of his wife's recent behavior. By the time I left, half the bar was convinced Claire was having an affair, and the other half was convinced I was having a nervous breakdown. Both worked for my purposes. My phone had been buzzing all day, texts from Claire increasingly frantic, a few from Ava asking if I was okay, one from Jules that just said, "Call me when you're ready to talk." Interesting. That evening, Mo called with his first report. Your instincts were right, he said. My guy followed them to the Mandarin Oriental this afternoon. They had lunch, then went upstairs to a room. Stayed for 2 hours. The confirmation hit me like a punch to the gut, even though I'd been expecting it. Pictures? Going in and coming out. Nothing explicit, but the timeline makes it pretty clear what they were doing. I closed my eyes. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of thinking we were building something together, and she was fucking her boss in hotel rooms while I was renovating our house. You okay, Bishop? Yeah, I'm fine. I wasn't fine, but I would be. What's next? Next, we turn up the heat. You ready to go home? I thought about Claire, probably pacing around our house trying to figure out what I knew and how much trouble she was in. I thought about Greg, smug and entitled, thinking he could take whatever he wanted without consequences. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. But first, I had a dinner invitation to extend. I came home Sunday evening like nothing had happened. Claire was waiting in the kitchen, still in her yoga clothes, looking like she hadn't slept in 2 days. The moment I walked through the door, she launched into a speech she'd obviously been rehearsing. Nate, thank God you're home. I've been worried sick. I know I said some things Friday night that came out wrong, and I'm sorry. I was drinking, and you know how I get when I'm trying to be funny in front of people. I never meant to hurt you. I set my bag down and looked at her. Really looked. She was beautiful. I'd never denied that. Blonde hair, green eyes, the kind of figure that turned heads when we walked into restaurants. But standing there in our kitchen, offering me this rehearsed apology, while the scent of Greg's cologne probably still lingered on her skin, she looked like a stranger. It's okay, I said. You were right. I am average. She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. No, you're not. I was being awful. You're wonderful, and I don't deserve you. That last part was true, at least. Actually, I said, opening the refrigerator and grabbing a beer, I've been thinking about what you said, about being spontaneous, so I want to have a dinner party next Friday. Nothing fancy, just a few friends. That sounds great. Relief flooded her voice. Who should we invite? Oh, the usual crowd. Ava, Jules, maybe Greg, since you two work so closely together. I watched her face carefully. I feel bad that I was so antisocial Friday night. I want to make it up to everyone. A flicker of panic crossed her features before she got it under control. Greg might be busy. You know how it is with work. Well, ask him. I insist. I smiled at her. I'll cook this time. Give you a break. That week, I played the part of the reformed husband, brought Claire flowers Tuesday, texted her sweet messages during the day, made her favorite dinner Wednesday night. She was so relieved that she almost seemed to forget she was cheating on me. Almost. Meanwhile, Mo's surveillance continued. Greg and Claire met for lunch twice that week, both times at restaurants across town where they were unlikely to run into anyone they knew. Thursday afternoon, they spent 3 hours at Greg's apartment while I was supposedly at a job site. I wasn't at a job site. I was at a specialty shop in Cambridge buying food coloring. Friday evening arrived. Claire had invited everyone, and to my surprise, they all said yes. Even Greg, though Claire mentioned he could only stay for a little while due to a prior commitment. I spent the afternoon cooking, my grandmother's recipe for beef bourguignon, fresh bread, a chocolate tart that took 3 hours to make properly. Claire kept trying to help, but I shooed her away. This is my show tonight, I told her. You just focus on being a good hostess. The guests arrived at 7. Ava showed up first, armed with wine and gossip about some drama at her marketing firm. Jewel came next, looking uncomfortable but trying to hide it. Greg arrived last, carrying expensive wine and wearing a smirk that made me want to punch him in his perfectly capped teeth. Nate, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. Claire told me you wanted to apologize for last week. Totally unnecessary, buddy. We all say things we don't mean when we've had a few drinks. That's very understanding of you, I said. Can I get you some wine? I have a special bottle I've been saving. I'd prepared the wine earlier, a nice Bordeaux with just enough blue food coloring mixed in to be noticeable, but not enough to change the taste significantly. The trick was in the presentation. "This is a 2015 Chateau Margaux," I announced, pouring Greg's glass first. "I've been saving it for a special occasion." Greg took a sip and nodded appreciatively. "Excellent choice. You can really taste the terroir. Pretentious ass probably couldn't tell a Chateau Margaux from a bottle of $2 Chuck." We sat down to dinner, and I played the perfect host. Charming, attentive, self-deprecating. I told stories about work, asked everyone about their jobs, complimented Ava's new haircut, just average Nate, trying to make up for his little tantrum the week before. It took about 20 minutes for the food coloring to take effect. "Greg," Jules said suddenly, staring at him with wide eyes, "are you feeling okay? You look blue." Everyone turned to look at Greg, whose lips and teeth had taken on a distinctly blue tint. He looked like he'd been sucking on a blue lollipop. "What do you mean?" Greg reached for his napkin, dabbing at his mouth. The napkin came away stained blue. "Oh my God!" Ava started giggling. "Your mouth is completely blue!" Greg jumped up and rushed to the bathroom. We could hear him gargling and spitting, trying to wash the color off. When he came back, his mouth was still blue, and his face was red with embarrassment and anger. "What the hell did you put in that wine?" he demanded. I looked at my own glass, then at everyone else's. "I don't know what you mean." "Everyone else looks fine," and they did. I'd only doctored Greg's glass. "This is some kind of joke," Greg said, his voice rising. "You did this on purpose." "Did what?" I stood up, the picture of innocent confusion. "Greg, I'm worried about you. Maybe you're having an allergic reaction to something." "Should we call a doctor?" Claire was staring between Greg and me, trying to figure out what was happening. Ava was still giggling. Jules looked like she wanted to disappear. "You know what?" Greg grabbed his jacket. "I don't have to put up with this amateur hour bullshit. Claire, call me tomorrow." The room went dead silent. Greg realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late. The casual intimacy in his voice, the assumption that Claire would call him, the way he'd completely dismissed me in my own house, it all painted a very clear picture. "Call you?" I repeated. "About what?" Greg's blue mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Work stuff. We have a project." "On Saturday?" "It's a big project." I nodded slowly, then turned to Claire. Her face had gone pale. "Honey," I said, my voice perfectly calm, "is there something you want to tell me about this big project?" Claire's eyes darted between Greg and me. "It's nothing. Just work. Just work," I repeated. "That requires phone calls on weekends, and lunch meetings at the Mandarin Oriental, and afternoon visits to Greg's apartment." The silence that followed was deafening. Greg's face went from red to white, making the blue around his mouth even more pronounced. Claire looked like she was going to be sick. "How did you—" She started, then stopped. "How did I what, honey? How did I find out that my wife is fucking her boss?" "Well, it turns out that when you call your husband average in front of your friends, he starts paying attention to things he might have missed before." Ava gasped. Jules stared at her plate. Greg was backing toward the door. "Look, this is obviously a private matter," Greg said. "I should go." "You should," I agreed. "But Greg, next time you want to steal someone's wife, maybe don't be so obvious about it. The blue mouth is nothing compared to how blue your balls are going to be when your wife finds out about this." Greg's wife. I'd almost forgotten about her, but from the look of panic on Greg's face, he hadn't. "You wouldn't," he said. I smiled at him, the same pleasant smile I'd been wearing all evening. "Try me." Greg left without another word. Ava and Jules followed soon after, mumbling awkward goodbyes and avoiding eye contact. Within 10 minutes, it was just Claire and me, standing in our dining room surrounded by the ruins of my carefully planned dinner party. "Nate," Claire said finally, "we need to talk." Do we? I think everything's pretty clear. You think I'm average, so you decided to upgrade. How's that working out for you? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are you going to do about it? She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, which, in a way, she was. Average Nate was gone. In his place was someone who'd spent a week planning the perfect humiliation for his cheating wife and her blue-mouthed boyfriend. What do you want? She asked. I want you to understand something, Claire. You called me average, but you were wrong. Average men don't plan revenge. Average men don't expose cheaters in front of their friends. Average men take their humiliation quietly and go away. I stepped closer to her, but I'm not average. I'm just patient, and you're about to learn the difference. The next morning, I woke up alone. Claire had slept in the guest room, and by the time I got downstairs, she was already gone. No note, no text, nothing. Just the lingering scent of her perfume and a coffee cup in the sink. My phone had 3 missed calls from Mo. You need to see this, he said when I called him back. Meet me at Murphy's in an hour. I found him in the back booth, laptop open, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Your dinner party made quite an impression, he said, turning the screen toward me. It was Ava's Instagram story. A video of Greg with his blue mouth, looking panicked and angry. The caption read, When dinner parties go wrong, Blue Monday, the drama, what did you do? The video had been viewed over 3,000 times. The comments were brutal. She posted this last night, I asked. Gets better. Check out the neighborhood app. Mo pulled up Next Door, the local social media platform where neighbors shared everything from lost cat notices to complaints about parking. Someone, I suspected Linda Garrison, had posted a thread titled Relationship Drama on Beacon Street. The post was carefully worded to avoid direct accusations, but the implication was clear. There was trouble in the Bishop marriage, possibly involving infidelity. The comments section was a feeding frenzy of gossip and speculation. Jesus, I muttered, scrolling through dozens of replies. I didn't expect it to spread this fast. Social media, brother. One embarrassing moment can go viral in hours. Mo closed the laptop. Question is, what's your next move? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Claire, we need to talk. Meet me at Starbucks on Charles Street in an hour. Please. I showed Mo the text. He raised an eyebrow. Public place. Smart. She's afraid to be alone with you. Should I go? Absolutely. But record the conversation. Massachusetts is a 2-party consent state, so you can't use it legally, but it might be useful for other purposes. An hour later, I walked into the Starbucks to find Claire already there, hunched over a latte in the corner. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing makeup. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. You said we needed to talk. Nate, this has gotten out of hand. Ava's Instagram post is everywhere. My neighbors are looking at me like I'm some kind of pariah. My mother called this morning asking if we're getting divorced. Are we? She flinched. I don't know. I hope not. I know I screwed up, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, figure out how to rebuild trust. Trust. I leaned back in my chair. That's interesting. Tell me, Claire, when exactly did you start fucking Greg? Before or after you called me average? She glanced around nervously. The Starbucks was crowded, and several people were close enough to overhear. Keep your voice down, she whispered. Why? Are you embarrassed? You weren't embarrassed when you humiliated me in front of our friends. That was different. I was drunk and stupid, and I said something cruel. But this, what you did last night, that was calculated. That was revenge. Yes, it was. And I'm just getting started. Her face went pale. What does that mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. I'd been busy that morning, creating a simple website with a domain name I'd purchased for $12, clairsavagehusband.com. The homepage had just one sentence. My wife called me average, so I decided to show her what average really looks like. You didn't, she breathed. I did. It's already indexed by Google. Try searching for your name. She fumbled for her phone, typed quickly, and watched her face crumble as the results loaded. Nate, please. You're destroying my reputation, my career, everything. Your career? You mean the job where you're sleeping with your boss? I'm sure HR has policies about that kind of thing. Greg and I, it's complicated. No, it's really not. You're married to me, and you're fucking him. That's about as uncomplicated as it gets. A woman at the next table was openly staring now. Claire noticed and sank lower in her chair. What do you want from me? She asked. You want me to grovel? Fine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I called you average. I'm sorry I cheated. I'm sorry I hurt you. What else do you want me to say? I don't want you to say anything. I want you to understand what it feels like to be humiliated in public. I want you to know what it's like when people look at you and see something pathetic and contemptible. So this is punishment. This is education. I stood up to leave, then paused. Oh, and Claire? You might want to call Greg. I heard his wife found out about his extracurricular activities. Something about blue teeth in a viral video. Apparently, she's not as understanding as you hoped I'd be. Claire's eyes went wide. What did you do? Nothing illegal. I just made sure the right people saw the right information. Amazing how fast news travels in the digital age. I left her sitting there, staring at her phone, probably trying to figure out how much of her life was about to implode. The answer, as it turned out, was most of it. By Monday morning, the story had taken on a life of its own. Greg's wife had indeed seen Ava's Instagram video, and she'd put two and two together. She'd confronted Greg, who'd apparently confessed everything in a panic. By noon, she'd changed her Facebook status to "It's complicated" and posted a cryptic message about trusting the wrong people. Claire's situation at work was even worse. Jules had finally decided to pick a side, and it wasn't Claire's. She'd gone to the company's actual HR department, not Claire's division, but the corporate oversight team, and reported the affair. An investigation was launched immediately. I learned all this from Mo, who'd been monitoring social media and had contacts throughout the city's professional networks. Greg's probably going to get fired, he told me over lunch at a deli in North End. The company has a strict policy about managers having relationships with subordinates. And Claire's looking at a suspension at minimum. Good. You sure about this, Bishop? You're burning down her whole life. I thought about that. A week ago, the idea of destroying Claire's career would have horrified me. But that was before she'd called me average in front of our friends. Before I'd found out she'd been cheating for months. Before she'd made me feel like a fool in my own house. She made her choices, I said. I'm just making sure there are consequences. That evening, I came home to find Claire pacing in the living room, still in her work clothes, looking frantic. They suspended me, she said the moment I walked through the door. Pending investigation. They might fire me, Nate. They might fire me because of your little revenge scheme. They might fire you because you were sleeping with your boss. I didn't make you do that. You orchestrated this whole thing, the dinner party, the video, the website. You planned all of it. Yes, I did. Turns out I'm pretty good at planning when I put my mind to it. Who knew? She stared at me like I was a stranger, which, again, I was. I don't know who you are anymore, she said. I'm your average husband, remember? The fight that followed was loud and ugly. She screamed, I stayed calm. She threw accusations, I stuck to facts. She demanded to know what I wanted from her, and I told her the truth. I wanted her to understand what she'd done to me. You didn't just cheat, I said finally. You made me feel worthless. You made me feel like I was lucky to have you, Like I should be grateful for whatever scraps of affection you threw my way. You turned me into a joke in my own life. So you decided to turn me into a joke in return? No. I decided to show everyone who you really are. The conversation ended with Claire storming out, saying she was going to stay with Ava for a few days. I didn't try to stop her, but I did make sure to document the fact that she'd abandoned our home. Just in case. Claire stayed away for 3 days. I spent that time putting my affairs in order, literally. I met with a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in high-conflict separations. I transferred money from our joint accounts to a personal account, all perfectly legal since they were marital assets. I changed the locks on the house, which was also legal since it was my house, purchased before the marriage. Most importantly, I planned my masterpiece. Thursday evening, Claire came back. She had Ava with her for moral support, and they both looked like they'd been drinking. Dutch courage, probably. "We need to settle this," Claire announced, standing in our living room like she was chairing a board meeting. "This has gone far enough." "I agree," I said. "It has gone far enough. Way too far." "Greg lost his job," she continued. "His wife kicked him out. His kids won't talk to him. Are you happy now?" "Ecstatic. What about you? Still suspended?" Her jaw tightened. "They're reviewing my case. My lawyer thinks I can fight it." "Your lawyer?" I raised an eyebrow. "That must be expensive. Good thing you have access to our savings account. Oh wait, you don't anymore." Ava spoke up for the first time. "Nate, you can't just steal Claire's money." "I didn't steal anything. I moved marital assets to protect them during divorce proceedings. My lawyer recommended it." "Divorce?" Claire's voice cracked. "You've already filed?" "Not yet. But I've prepared the papers. I can file them tomorrow if I want to." "What do you want?" she asked. The same question she'd been asking for 2 weeks, but now there was desperation in it. "I want you to understand something. You called me average, but you were wrong. Average men don't plan elaborate revenge schemes. Average men don't systematically destroy their cheating wives' lives. Average men take their humiliation quietly and disappear." I walked over to the window and looked out at the street. Greg's Mustang was parked across the road. He'd been sitting there for 20 minutes, probably working up the courage to come to the door. "But I'm not average," I continued. "I'm methodical. I'm patient. And I'm very, very good at solving problems." "This isn't solving anything," Claire said. "This is just cruelty." "No, this is justice." "But you're right about one thing. It's not solving anything, so I'm going to solve it. Tonight." I walked to the front door and opened it, then stepped onto the porch. "Greg," I called out. "I know you're out there. Why don't you come in? We're all here. Might as well make it a party." After a moment, Greg got out of his car. He looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled clothes, the appearance of a man whose life had imploded in the span of a week. He walked up the front steps slowly, like he was approaching a gallows. "Nate," he said, "I know you have every right to hate me, but—" "I don't hate you," I interrupted. "I despise you. There's a difference. Hate is emotional. What I feel for you is much colder than that." We went inside, where Claire and Ava were waiting. The 4 of us stood in my living room, the same room where I'd spent 8 years of my marriage, and I realized this was probably the last time we'd all be in the same place. "So," I said, settling into my favorite chair, "here we are." The cheating wife, the slimy boss, the enabler friend, and the average husband. Sounds like the setup for a joke. "Nate, please," Greg said. "I know I screwed up. We both did. But you've made your point. You've ruined both our careers, destroyed my marriage, turned us into social pariahs. Isn't that enough?" "Is it enough, Claire?" I asked. "Do you think it's enough?" She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did." "You hurt me in the worst possible way." You made me feel like nothing. Like I was so insignificant that you could humiliate me in public and fuck another man behind my back, and I'd just take it because I was grateful to have you. I stood up and walked over to the mantelpiece where our wedding photo sat. We looked so young, so happy, so naive. The funny thing is, you were probably right about me being average. I was a decent husband, a reliable provider, a good man who loved his wife and tried to build a life with her. That's pretty average, I guess. I picked up the photo and looked at it for a long moment. But you know what's not average? What I've done to you these past 2 weeks. The planning, the execution, the complete destruction of your lives. That took skill. That took creativity. That took someone who's anything but average. I set the photo down and turned back to them. So, here's what's going to happen. Claire, you're going to pack your things and leave. Tonight. You're going to move in with Greg or Ava or whoever will have you, and you're going to start figuring out how to rebuild your life from nothing. Nate, I'm not finished. Greg, you're going to stay away from my wife. Oh wait, she won't be my wife much longer. You're going to stay away from my ex-wife. You're going to find a new job, probably in a different city, and you're going to spend the rest of your life remembering what happens when you mess with someone you think is beneath you. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street. A few neighbors were gathered on their porches, probably drawn by the raised voices and the drama. Perfect. And Ava, you're going to stop enabling your friends' bad behavior and start thinking about what kind of person you want to be. Because right now, you're just as pathetic as they are. You can't talk to me like that, Ava said, but her voice was shaking. I can talk to you however I want. This is my house and you're not welcome here. I walked back to my chair and sat down. Now get out, all of you. I have divorce papers to file in the morning. They left without another word. Claire grabbed a few things from upstairs, Greg slunk out to his car, and Ava followed them both, probably already planning how to spin this story on social media. I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by the remnants of my marriage, and realized something important. I wasn't average. I never had been. I'd just been playing the role of an average man, because that's what Claire wanted. A safe, predictable husband who wouldn't cause trouble or demand too much attention. But that man was gone now. In his place was someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. Someone who'd just won a war that most people didn't even know was being fought. I poured myself a whiskey and raised a toast to my empty house. Here's to being above average, I said out loud. Outside, Greg's Mustang drove away for the last time, carrying my cheating wife to whatever uncertain future awaited her, and I smiled. The story should have ended there. Claire moved out, I filed for divorce, and life moved on. But Claire had one more surprise for me. She came back. Not to reconcile. We were way past that. She came back to fight. 3 weeks after she'd left with Greg, I came home from work to find her car in the driveway and her standing on my front porch with a locksmith. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. "Getting into my house," she said. "My lawyer says you can't just lock me out of marital property." "Your lawyer is wrong. This house was mine before we got married. It's not marital property." "We'll see about that." The locksmith looked uncomfortable. "Maybe you folks should work this out between yourselves." "No," Claire said firmly. "I'm paying you to change these locks. Do your job." I pulled out my phone and called the police. Within 10 minutes, a patrol car pulled up, and Officer Martinez, a guy I'd gone to high school with, got out. "What's the problem, Nate?" "My estranged wife is trying to break into my house." Claire whirled around. "It's not breaking in." "This is my home, too." Martinez looked between us, clearly not wanting to get involved in domestic drama. "Ma'am, do you have documentation showing you have a right to be here?" Claire fumbled for her phone. "My lawyer said—" "Your lawyer's not here," Martinez said patiently. "And without a court order, I can't let you force entry into someone else's property." Someone else's property? I've lived here for 8 years. But the deed's in my name, I said calmly. Want to see it? The locksmith packed up his tools and left without changing anything. Claire stood on my porch, shaking with rage, while Martinez tried to defuse the situation. Look, folks, this is a civil matter. You need to work it out through your lawyers and the courts. But right now, ma'am, you need to leave. This isn't over, Claire said to me as she walked back to her car. Yes, it is, I replied. You just don't know it yet. But I was wrong. It wasn't over. Over the next week, Claire launched a campaign of harassment that would have impressed a military strategist. She called my work, claiming I was having a mental breakdown and might be dangerous. She posted on social media about abusive husbands and financial manipulation. She even showed up at Murphy's pub one night with Ava and Jules, trying to turn the neighborhood against me. The problem was, everyone already knew the real story. The affair, the public humiliation, the way she'd abandoned our home, it was all common knowledge by now. Claire's attempts to paint herself as the victim just made her look more desperate. But she wasn't done yet. Friday evening, I was grilling dinner on my back deck when I heard voices from the front of the house, multiple voices getting louder. I walked around to see what was happening and found Claire standing in my front yard with a small crowd of people I didn't recognize. That's him, she was saying, pointing at me. That's the man who's been stalking and harassing me. The crowd, maybe 8 or 10 people, turned to stare at me. They looked like college students, probably friends of friends who'd been recruited for whatever performance Claire was staging. Claire, I said calmly, what are you doing? I'm exposing you for what you really are, she shouted. A manipulative, abusive man who destroys women who try to leave him. One of the college kids, a skinny guy with a man bun, stepped forward. Dude, you need to leave her alone. Harassment isn't cool. I'm not harassing anyone, I said. I'm standing in my own yard. Your yard? Claire laughed bitterly. Tell them about the website, Nate. Tell them about the public humiliation. Tell them about stealing my money. By now, neighbors were coming out of their houses to see what the commotion was about. Tom and Linda Garrison, the Patels from next door, old Mrs. Chen from across the street, they all stood on their porches watching the show. You want me to tell them the truth? I asked. Fine. Claire, why don't you tell your friends here about Greg Fallon? Tell them about the hotel rooms and the afternoon visits to his apartment. Tell them about calling me average in front of our friends while you were fucking your boss behind my back. The college kids looked confused. This wasn't the narrative they'd been fed. That's not the point, Claire said, but her voice was getting shrill. The point is what you did after. What I did after, I repeated. You mean after I found out my wife was cheating on me? After she humiliated me in public? After she made me feel like garbage in my own home? I walked closer to the group, and several of them stepped back instinctively. What I did was show her what consequences look like. What I did was prove that actions have repercussions. What I did was demonstrate that even average men can be dangerous when you push them too far. See? Claire said desperately. He's threatening me. You all heard him, but the college kids were backing away now, realizing they'd been dragged into something messier and more complicated than they'd been told. The man bun guy was already walking toward his car. Claire, I said, and my voice was perfectly calm. You need to leave. Now, before I call the police again. I'm not afraid of you, she said. But she was. I could see it in her eyes. You should be. Not because I'm going to hurt you, I'm not. But because I'm done playing games with you. I'm done being patient. I'm done being reasonable. You want to keep fighting? Fine. But understand that I will win. I will always win. Because I'm smarter than you, I'm more patient than you, and I have absolutely nothing left to lose. The crowd was dispersing now, the college kids piling into their cars and driving away. Even Ava, who'd been lurking at the edge of the group, was backing toward her car. This isn't over, Claire said, but there was no conviction in it anymore. Yes, I said. It is. She left. Got in her car and drove away, and I never saw her again. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Claire didn't contest it, couldn't contest it really, given the evidence of her affair and abandonment. She moved to Seattle with what was left of her savings, got a job with a smaller company, and started over. Greg disappeared entirely. Last I heard, he was working for a consulting firm in Denver, divorced and broke. Ava deleted her social media accounts after the backlash from her Instagram video became too much to handle. Jules got promoted to Claire's old position and sent me a Christmas card that year with a note. Thanks for showing me what real loyalty looks like. As for me, I kept the house, kept my job, and kept the respect of my neighbors. I'd gone from being average Nate, the reliable husband who could be taken for granted, to being someone people treated with a certain wariness. Not fear, exactly, but a recognition that there was more to me than met the eye. I liked that. I liked being underestimated right up until the moment I proved people wrong. 6 months after the divorce, I was at Murphy's Pub having a beer with Mo when a woman approached our table. She was pretty, dark hair, intelligent eyes, probably in her early 30s. "Excuse me," she said, "but are you Nate Bishop?" I tensed, wondering if this was another one of Claire's schemes. "Depends who's asking." She smiled. "I'm Sarah Martinez, Officer Martinez's sister. He told me your story, and I just wanted to say, what you did to your ex-wife was brilliant. Completely ruthless, but brilliant. Thanks, I think. Can I buy you a drink? I'd love to hear the whole story from your perspective." I looked at Mo, who was grinning like an idiot. Then I looked back at Sarah Martinez with her dark hair and intelligent eyes, and her appreciation for well-executed revenge. "Sure," I said. "But just so you know, I'm not average." She laughed. "I certainly hope not. And that's how I learned that being above average has its advantages. People might underestimate you at first, but once they realize what you're capable of, they never make that mistake again. Claire called me average once, in front of our friends, while she was cheating on me with her boss. She was wrong, and I made sure she never forgot it."